Hi, I'm Kim, the founder and editor of For Harriet, and this is the second edition of the For Harriet Editorial Roundtable. Yay!
Yay!
So this is where we come together to talk about what we liked on the site and what worked and kind of give a little bit more insight into how we keep this thing going because it's a lot of work and it's definitely not easy. So let's get into it. So I introduced myself. So Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Michelle Jackson. I am the senior editor of For Harriet, and I get to work with Kim, who is awesome, and Deonna, who is awesome, about being magical black girls and black girl excellence, and it's a great thing.
All right, Deonna.
I am Deonna Anderson, and I am the junior editor at For Harriet, and I get to work with Michelle and Kim, which is awesome, and work with all the contributors at For Harriet to make sure that all their pieces are nice and ready for publication.
All right, so I get asked a lot about how we choose what goes up on the site, and I thought that it'd be good to give a little bit of insight into it. It's not rocket science, but for some reason people really think that we are like the Illuminati and like we're conspiring to, I don't know, like bring down the race and how we choose. So I have thoughts, but I don't want to go first. Michelle, like, how do you come up with ideas for what you think we should publish?
I mean, I try to pay attention as close as possible to like what's going on in current news events or like entertainment, pop culture. So that's one thing, and also like how can we? So it's not enough that like Beyonce wore. I'm using Beyonce as an example again, and I know we're gonna get shit for it. But like, it's the first image that pops in my mind. Like Beyonce wore a sparkly dress, and so that's not. I mean, yes, like fashion is cool and everything, but like, how did people react to that? So that's one way of the way like I look at things and think about like, oh, well, how can we take an interesting angle on this, or just so it's not regurgitating the same thing that maybe every other site is talking about, or if we are talking about something that like people universally think like this is great or this is not so great, like how can we be critical about that? So that's one way that I come up with like when we do assignments for contributors. As far as like when we get open submissions through Submittable, it really is a mixture of things. It can be like if it's an old idea, like so for instance, we see a lot of things on like hair or colorism or racism, which are very, very important topics, but after you've read 100 pieces about those things, you start, not that you get jaded, but you are always looking for like someone's new take on something, or like if they put their unique experience in it, or like things I've never heard about. If I like it, if it catches my eye, I have a very short attention span, so like if within 60 seconds I'm somewhere else, and I can't come back and then like re-engage with the piece, then usually I'm thinking that it's not something that's really going to captivate our audience. But there's also times where I've been wrong, and like someone like Deonna will see something, she's like, this is cool, or Kim will see something and like, actually this is good. So it's very subjective. It's very subjective, guys. Like don't get so upset. It's so subjective.
Yeah, so the other thing is like, I feel like I mentioned this last week, but it's fine to reiterate the fact that like sometimes you know it's going to work, right? So I pay a lot of attention to what people are talking about on social media, right? So like on Twitter, on Facebook, right? Things that people find engaging and want to discuss, right? Because For Harriet was originally created as a place where Black women could like talk about things, and sometimes people criticize us for talking about quote unquote controversial things, but I think it's good and healthy to have debate and go back and forth anyways. So I spend a lot of time looking at social media. What are people engaging with? What are big stories? And sometimes people will pitch things that are completely unrelated to popular events and big news that are just really interesting and thoughtful and engaging. And in my mind, I will have no inkling that it will be popular, but I will say, well, this is interesting, right? Like, this is a story that needs to be told. This is a new perspective. And so let's go ahead and do it. And sometimes those pieces blow up, and you're just like, cool, great, like awesome. But you never know. You never know. Deonna, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I feel like I'm still learning about like what works with For Harriet, but I feel like also paying attention to social media is very key, and like not just what Black people are talking about, but what everyone is talking about. So we had a piece this week about teaching or unteaching racism to third graders. It was like a kind of a response to a New York Magazine article, and I feel like being able to like have a Black woman's take on this thing that's national is like a great thing that For Harriet does. It's like rewriting what we think into different things. So I think that's a great way that we write stories.
Right, and I think that's also along the vein of expanding what we conceive to be quote-unquote Black women's issues, right? So issues that are engaging to Black women are not just when somebody like D.L. Hughley says that we're crazy and ugly and angry, right? For some reason, like, I thought about D.L. Hughley today, and I just got really mad. So that's the reason why that's at the forefront of my mind. But it's not just about responding to quote-unquote misogynoir, right? So it's also, like you're saying, right? Like, we live in this world that encompasses lots of different issues. So one of the things that we're really trying to do now is make sure that we are engaging as many different issues as possible. So we kind of talked a little bit last week about trying to be more inclusive, right? So Deonna, you mentioned that intersectionality was really important to you. I think intersectionality is really important to all of us. Like, I really hope that I have brought people on board who like get it. But I am genuinely interested in how we can make sure, or like in the editorial process, or even when we're corresponding with freelancers, how we can make sure that we are getting a diverse array of voices, right? Voices that cover the expansiveness of the Black woman's experience.
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about that like since last week's editorial roundtable, because I'm like, should we just do like a call for like we want diverse writers to submit to us, or like I'm still trying to figure out how we can like do that too. I don't know, because I don't want to like single out any group. Like, we need more of you here, but it's all like, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it's touchy, right? Because you don't want to be like, we really need a trans woman's voice, and like objectify, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. If people are watching, please feel free to email, tweet, Facebook message, though I would ask you to do that sparingly, us about how we can be more inclusive and how we can make sure that we are not contributing to ongoing marginalization of Black women. I don't know. It's our responsibility, right? So I don't want to just say I don't know, but I think that this is definitely an ongoing conversation that we should have, and proactively reaching out is the first step. So I think that should be at the top of our list of things to do. Okay, so let's talk about favorite pieces of the week.
So my favorite piece this week was Jen M. Jackson's "We Really Need Black Women to Stop Policing um, Black Women's Self-Definition." Number one, it was so well written. Like, I get really excited when I see well written, like thoughtful, like all of our pieces like go up and they're polished and stuff like that. But like they're like Jen like is one of those writers where like she just talks it to you every single time. And this piece was really good, and it also got a really good conversation going in the comments. And I think that's a lot of times what I like about a piece is if you can continue the conversation beyond the piece, and it's not just people saying like I liked this, but like people are engaging and sharing their opinions in a respectful manner. And like it's just something that's so important, especially as I've been like paying more attention to the comment section of our pieces, and we do, I don't know why, because like it's so explicit that we say that For Harriet is a space for Black women and the fullness of Black women's stories. But, like, we get a lot of comments where men police our content. Like we had a comment earlier this week of like a Black man saying like, "Oh, good for you guys for not promoting women acting like sluts," or something like that with the piece. And like my blood started boiling, and it's like I just don't understand why men think this is okay. And she tackled that issue really well. And yeah, and it's something that I just always keep coming back to, and like why I think For Harriet is so important, because we're one of the only spaces that is explicitly like for Black women. Like, you know, we post, like you guys were saying, we do try to post about other stuff that's not maybe expressly Black women's issues, but she just hit the nail on the head with this one. I have a lot of thoughts, my bad, and I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, but I really, really liked it.
I really liked it too. I need to plug in my laptop because, anyways. So while I'm doing that, Deonna, go ahead. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm gonna be right back. Do you have any thoughts on Jen's piece? Because I thought it was really amazing. So talk about it. Let's get into it.
I thought that piece was also good because I feel like I had a conversation earlier this week about like how Black men like care about women's bodies but not actually women, and I think like I don't yeah, like I feel like that's kind of touched upon in Jen's piece, not explicitly, but it's like we like I don't know, we're not seen as like full human beings, and like often policed, and like we are humans. Like we should just be able to do whatever we want to do without being policed, and we should be supported by Black men. I don't know. I feel like it's complicated.
It is really complicated, and as you were saying that, I thought about, and I think Jen mentioned this in her piece actually, of like how when it comes to respectability politics, Black men are the first to be like, I don't like it when people judge me, like say like, oh, because the way I'm dressed that I'm a thug or something like that, and then they go around and do the exact same thing with what a woman is wearing, or like, oh, she's dressed like that, so she must be a thought, which is, why did that term come up? Or like, she's dressed like this, she's a slut. And it's like, you are doing the exact same thing that you don't want other people to do to you. And that a whole movement almost has been created around, and yet you don't see the connection. And it's like, and yet, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure what you just said was really thoughtful. Just kidding. So, piggybacking off of what Michelle just said, what we get a lot, it's so interesting, right? Like, men come to For Harriet, Black men in particular come to For Harriet, like there's no other spaces on the internet, right? So it's like, or that there's no spaces that center Black men or that center the needs and the interests of Black men. So I'm just really always just really baffled, because I'm always just like, but you see, it's very clear, it's explicitly stated, like the tagline is, we're celebrating the fullness of Black womanhood, so we're going to center Black women, we're going to center Black women's voices. And it's just really, I don't, and there's no real, like, how do you even really deal with that, right? Like, do you ban every single Black male troll? Like, do you ban no, like, seriously, like, do you ban a Black man every time they, like, come in and saying, like Michelle said, like, that man that I did clap back on that said, like, good job not promoting girls to be sluts, or something, like, you know, like, there's no, I honestly do not know how to, like, handle it. And sometimes I feel like maybe we don't do, and, like, sometimes I feel like we don't do enough. I don't know. Thoughts on making sure that this is a safe space for Black women. Because that piece is one of those pieces where the trolls come out.
So I think, like, we have to respond to them and not just block them, or maybe, I don't know. Because, like, I feel like there needs to be a conversation around that. Like, maybe if we continue, if there's continually seeds planted in them, like, hey, it's not good to police us, then maybe they'll get it. Like I really enjoyed the fact that you, like, clap back. Like, I liked that comment back that you gave to him, because I feel like it was necessary. Like, you don't come in this space where we're talking about not policing us and then police us.
Yeah, but, you know, it's not my natural orientation to be like, oh, let me teach you. It's just not, like, that's not my first inclination at all. It's not even something I even have a desire to do, because I don't feel like it's necessary. I feel like, oh, let me help you understand the Black woman's experience takes a lot of energy, and it takes our focus away from the work that we're trying to do in service of Black women. I feel like even, you know, the pieces that we make that are quote-unquote directed toward Black men, or the pieces that we publish that are directed toward white people, they're still not centering white people. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, they're still not right. So they're still not about white people's feelings. They're still not about Black men's feelings, right? So that's an ongoing conversation that we're still trying to figure out. Do you have any more thoughts on that, Michelle?
I like what Deonna said about, like, not just block. Like, sometimes people do need to be blocked. Like, if you come out your neck and you're cussing people out or calling people bitches and stuff like that, you get blocked. Like, I don't have time for it. But also, I think it's hard because I'm a highly sensitive person, and I too am one of those people who's like, I want to engage, I want this to be a teaching moment, or sometimes I just want to, you know, I do want to clap back, but then I'm also like, I have to take care of my well-being, and that is as well as, like, making sure that it's a safe space for our commenters. But, like, if you read enough of those comments and you engage with them enough, they can put you in a very heavy space. And I think oftentimes people forget that we're human beings that are running this site. And so when we read these things and we're fully engaged, like this isn't a job that you can really be detached from, because this is a job about our identities. This is a space about who we are. And so I hear when people are saying, like, you know, these are moments to teach or these are moments to engage, but at the same time, it's like, how do we do that and stay safe so we can also keep producing this work so we don't get fatigued and say, well, we're just not going to write it or post pieces about this anymore.
Okay. Yeah. No, so listen, that is the realest shit. Because there was a time a couple of months ago when I was legit like, I think I need to shut down for Harriet. Like, I think we need to just stop publishing, because I was so emotionally drained from the trolls that are, I'm gonna not just call them trolls, right? So, like, the people who say, like, hateful things that are not only Black men, right? A lot of Black women say hateful things, right? You know, a lot people in general say hateful things, so we are the people who have to go through the comments. We're the people that have to answer the Facebook messages. I get so many emails, just like horrible hate emails. That stuff is psychologically draining. Like, there was a point where I was just like, my emotional well-being is suffering. And I think because it's the internet, people feel emboldened to say really horrible, nasty things. But also, the people in our community whom I love and appreciate and adore, I sometimes think they don't realize that, like you said, like we are humans, right? And so, like, whenever, like, people are saying, like, oh, ugly black bitches again, when you see that continually, right, like, it's traumatic. And that trauma compounds itself. And so, I want to make sure that we are responsive to the community, that we are engaged in the community, but also that we are protecting our emotional well-being and our mental health, because, listen, the community, you know, ain't gonna come pick you up off the ground when you crying because you've seen, like, black women are nasty black bitches, like, 1,000 times. Like, it's just... Anyways, it's a difficult thing. That's something that I wanted to talk about in a future editorial roundtable, but I'm glad that we touched on that. Now let's talk about colorism. Okay. So, no, this is a real thing. So from the time that I started for Harriet, colorism has always been a really popular topic, right? So I noticed very early on that colorism, relationships, colorism in relationships, and, you know, black men in general, get a lot of engagement from the community. But colorism is one of those things that people don't like to talk about, right? So anytime we'll post a piece about colorism, people will say, for Harriet, why are you, or they'll just say Harriet because they just believe that for Harriet is run by a woman named Harriet, but my name is Kimberly, your name is Michelle, your name is Deonna, so nobody named Harriet works at For Harriet. Okay, anyways, they will say, for Harriet, why do you keep trying to make this an issue? Like, literally, every single time we've read a colorism piece, people are like, they get so upset, so mad at us, and I'm just like, but why though?
I think, like, okay, I'm gonna process this as I'm speaking. So when I first started interning, and then when I first started being the editorial assistant, I was really engaged in the colorism pieces just because it's an issue that, like, it's an actual issue I've had to deal with in my life, and that I've had to, like, process my feelings about being a brown-skinned black girl growing up in a very, like, white environment, and, like, how not only racism affected me, but, like, that internalized racism, internalized colorism. But I think the thing that bothers me the most, number one, is, like, we don't make anything an issue. Like, we speak about issues that women want to talk about. Like, people don't realize, people pitch these ideas to us, they send us these pieces, and if we connect with them on an emotional level, then we think that they're worthy of being shared. And, like, it's so dismissive to tell someone, like, why are you making this an issue? Because someone really is dealing with this, and there's lots of people who are affected by this. The second thing that I found is interesting is, like, there's a lack of, it's easy, I feel like it's very easy, and I don't want to speak for all black people, but I think it's easy for some black people to accept the way that racism has influenced their lives, but not really take into account the way that maybe I don't know if you want to, it's not inter-black.
Is it like intra-racial?
Yeah, like intra-racial issues have affected them. And a lot of times I feel like people think when we speak on colorism, whether it's a piece about a light-skinned woman speaking about her experience as a light-skinned woman, or a black-skinned woman speaking about, or a dark-skinned woman speaking about her experiences as a dark-skinned woman, or a brown-skinned woman speaking about her experiences, they think that that piece is automatically attacking whoever does not identify as that. And so then all the communication and all the opportunity for dialogue and maybe for healing breaks down, and that's not the point. And it's been something that, I don't know, and I've tried everything from like how you frame the piece when we post it on Facebook, when I do post on Facebook, to like if I'm working with a writer, making sure like, hey, maybe try like the way you want to frame this thing this way, because I know that someone might take your words out of context, blah, blah, blah. But it's been so hard, but I think it really is an issue, and I don't think any Black person can say like they've never been affected by colorism. So yeah, it's just one of those topics that I think is important to talk about. We get a lot of pieces about it. And I think some people do want to engage in the conversation. It's just that all the voices who want to take a simplistic view of something or don't want to talk about it usually drown out those voices who do want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of what you said, and I feel like maybe we should have like a Twitter discussion or something about colorism. I'm sure you've probably done that in the past. I don't know what you did like since before Harriet actually started. But like maybe that will be the space where we can talk about it, because it is an important discussion, and like you said, like people's voices who want to talk about it get drowned out. But then if we have a Twitter discussion, the trolls might also come. So we have to be weary of that as well. I don't know. I feel like Michelle said, we have a trouble examining like issues within our race, and I feel like it's something that we should continue talking about at For Harriet. Like, yeah, maybe that'll keep engaging people.
Yeah, I think that, okay, so I have a very specific worldview, which I say all the time, and my very specific worldview is that it doesn't work both ways, right? So, meaning, before people take this out of context, meaning that the discrimination that people with darker skin receive is different from the feelings of alienation and embarrassment and harassment that people with light skin receive, right? Because there are societal advantages to having light skin. So I never want to have a conversation on For Harriet that does not explicitly say that colorism, that your feelings are valid, but colorism works like this, and these are the real life consequences of colorism, right? Like much like racism, it doesn't go both ways, right? But that doesn't mean that your feelings are not valid, but this is like it is a mechanism of racism, and we need to be very real about what it is, how it works in our society, and, not try to sugarcoat it to make people on a certain end of the spectrum feel like we are dismissing their feelings. It's difficult to do that, right? Bill Duke has shown us that it is very difficult to have, no shade, that it is very difficult to have inclusive conversations about colorism that are also thoughtful, that are grounded in historical facts, that it's really hard. I don't know. Anyways, I do think that we should definitely continue to have conversations. I'm definitely down with having a Twitter chat about it. It's just like, how many times can we say that, like, it's a real thing? Saying every time somebody wants to pop up saying, it's not real, y'all are making it real. And I want to be like, but girl, you sound like a white person. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was I going to say? You sound like a white person. what I was gonna say was that I think generally it's very difficult for Black women to conceive that we have privilege, right? So I think for lighter skinned women, it's difficult for them to acknowledge that there are social advantages that come with having lighter skin. You know, I'll say that I have socioeconomic privilege, I have class privilege, I have educational privilege, right? I'm a hetero, straight woman, cisgendered woman, right? And this is also where the trans discussion comes in, because people get really prickly about our inclusion of trans people. I think that we all have to know that we all can have social privileges and accept that and acknowledge that and be ready and willing to tackle that head on. Okay. So did I say what my favorite piece of the week is? My favorite piece of the week was Jen's piece because it was dope and it was very, very well written. I just love, I think we get a lots of well-written pieces, like Michelle said, but sometimes a piece is just right on every single level, right? It's right in the writing, it's right in the sentiment, it like hits all the right notes. That piece really hit all the right notes for me. But let's go into wrapping it up, the most popular piece of the week on For Harriet, and that would be men who prey on young girls must be held accountable. So this is the piece about Joe Morrissey, I think is his name. It was written by Dee Renee. And Joe Morrissey impregnated a 17-year-old girl. I think she was 17 at the time. And she was his office assistant. And he actually went to jail for that. But he didn't plead guilty to it, but he did go to jail for, I don't know what they do down there, I think in Virginia. But I think it's really important for us to explore the idea of sexual exploitation of Black girls, of the ways that we are preyed upon. And I'm really glad that people responded so well to this piece, by far. So do we have any ideas about why y'all think it was so popular?
Sorry, Deonna, you go first.
I think part of it is that it was intersectional. I think Dee kind of like, she talked about how Joe Morrissey has some privilege and like in like preying on I forgot her name. Oh my gosh.
Myrna.
Yes,
Myrna.
I think that's part of it, like acknowledging his privilege and I don't know. You can talk more, Michelle.
So number one, I think people respond to visual images, and that I really want to say a very bad word right now. That fucking picture.
Oh yeah.
Of oh my God, there's so much to say about that picture. I think number one, that engaged people. Cause damn, that photo of like the antebellum costumes and the white man and the was just like, I don't even know how to put it, but for me it's just like flaunting this thing. Like it's just just a disregard, like, yeah, I don't give a shit, like I did this. So I think the photo really captured people's attention. I think Dee did a very good job of like analyzing what's going on there. And I think right now that conversation about like how people exploit young Black girls and teenage Black girls is important, number one, because I think a lot of people's attention has been on like Kylie Jenner and the Tyga, which we've written about and we've discussed before, but people don't realize or don't want to accept that that happens to Black girls, because Black girls are socialized and people see us in a way that like people have a hard time accepting that Black girls and Black women can be victims, that we know this, that we are hypersexualized, that we are objectified, that we can be taken advantage of. And there's so many different reasons for that. And I think this story really gets at that. And it's just so complex. And then, I don't know, it's just there's a lot going on there. But I think those two things were what really engaged our audience, our community.
Yeah.
The photos did it, honestly. I really believe that. I want to believe that people just really care deep down in their hearts so much about the exploitation of Black girls. But we're Black girls, so we know that's not true. But honestly, the photo in the, slave master, thing, that dynamic was so absurd that I think it really got people on the site. And I'm glad that once you get to the site, then you read about the exploitation of Black girls, but it's really, really difficult to turn away from a white man and a Black woman dressed like they're going ready to a Confederate ball. Okay, so the last thing is, what do I wish we would have covered this week on the site? You know what I was thinking? I'm going to go first because I just thought of this. I completely didn't assign anybody anything about Ava DuVernay's, Affirm, Rebel-a-thon. I think she's raising money for Affirm, and they distribute independent films by Black people. Totally was not tuned into that, completely missed it. Maybe we can circle back around to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, number one, I just love Ava DuVernay so much. And what I think it's, people, a lot of attention gets placed on, making films, but then films have to be distributed. You can make a film and no one will ever see it. And so the fact that she's touching on that and she has a background on that is really important, because that's how you get Black films seen, is you have to distribute them and know where to find audiences and stuff like that. So that is something I too wish we would have talked about. I don't know, we did touch on this, so everyone has been losing their shit over Riley Curry, which is Steph Curry's daughter, because she's been in the interviews and she's so adorable. And then I started reading some think pieces about people are getting bothered that he's bringing her to these pressers because she's a distraction. And I think it was CFC Crunk I'm going to mess up their name.
I read something on Crunk Feminist Collective about Riley. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure, I haven't been engaged with that story to know, but they basically just talked about, the way that seeing this, little Black girl act out, but, she's just being a 2-year-old, makes people uncomfortable. And in the way that we want Black kids to behave. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know necessarily that's an idea that would have originated from my mind, but I did think that was interesting.
Yeah, I did read that piece, and I thought it was interesting. I don't know how many times you can say, a toddler gone toddler. You know what I'm saying? One of the reasons why I didn't come up with anything, because I just think, I don't know, for some reason I just didn't, it's a kid, and people have been making comments about Riley Curry, about her hair, right, about her behavior, she's unruly, and I'm just but have you ever seen a toddler before? Because that's just what they do.
That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That was a really good piece on Crunk Feminist Collective. For some reason, I didn't see how we would incorporate it. You have any thoughts, Deonna?
There was a piece that was on Mother Jones this week about Tanisha Anderson, who was killed in Cleveland sometime last year, and I think it said that no charges have been brought about to the police who shot her, but I couldn't figure out a way to incorporate that into an article for it, just because I feel that just keeps happening, and I wanted to figure out a way to like I couldn't figure out which lens to like write that under. But
I think one of the difficulties for us, and it comes because For Harriet produces so much content, is that so many of these things are reoccurring, right? So if we're talking about Riley Curry and Misogynoir directed at Black girls, you know, like these are things that we have covered like so many times. Like how many times, like, can we tell you to like stop projecting your anti-Blackness onto Black girls? How many times can we tell you to that Black women's lives matter too? Like how many times can we reiterate the fact that we need to get serious about people with mental health and providing them services and resources? You know what I'm saying? And so I feel difficulty in that too when I'm trying to come up with ideas for the site, right? So want to make sure that we are addressing things that are timely, but you know, it's like I don't want to write or publish the same piece over and over again. It's a really difficult balance to strike, because honestly, people be like high-fiving me all the time, like, y'all be publishing a lot. Yes. There's a lot of stuff that goes up on For Harriet every single day, like every day. So something for everybody. So yeah, it's a tough balance to strike, is what I'm trying to say. All right, so that's the end of it. This was the second edition of For Harriet Roundtable. I'm Kim.
I'm Michelle.
And I'm Deonna.
Y'all picked right on up. See, that's what I like about y'all. Y'all really got it. All right, so see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.